Okay, we're live.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, March 14th Curriculum Committee sub-meeting. And we'll go ahead and just dive right in. Dr. Hinkle, do you want to run this through our norms and we'll go to the first agenda item?
Absolutely. So welcome everyone. This is the curriculum subcommittee. The purpose of this subcommittee is to collaborate between the Board of Education stakeholders and school-based leadership to discuss all aspects of curricula, instruction assessment, student achievement, school culture, and climate in the Weston Public Schools. As a quick reminder, our virtual norms is that we request all cameras to remain on at all times. If we're not speaking, then our microphones are muted. We want to be present and engaged. We want to seek to understand, and we want to focus on the agenda for the afternoon and keep discussion and comments on the specific topics in the agenda. We have a pretty lean agenda this afternoon, some updates and follow-ups, and then we'll talk about next steps for April. So we're going to start. Last evening, if you were with us, Principal Megan Ward from Weston High School presented and provided an update regarding the Portrait of a Graduate. And I just wanted to give her a few additional minutes in this arena to follow up with any additional questions related to the schedule that's coming up this week. I'm really excited to participate and with the student groups and look at their presentations. So welcome, Megan. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Did you want to just give us a brief update on the schedule within this committee? I think many of us are going to participate in the student presentations. And if anybody has any follow-up questions from last night, that's why Megan is here today.
Sure. So as I said last night, we're using the elementary school conference schedule. So we have a quick meeting with our staff to kind of calibrate tomorrow morning, and then our panels will begin. And then we're also using the afternoons of Thursday and Friday, which is a huge benefit because really to give kind of credence to the work that the students have been doing over the past 2 to 3 years, because Portrait of the Graduate, that mandate for that mastery-based assessment came down. So to be able to commit this time to allow the staff to meet with these students is really, so important for the whole process, because they've spent so much time working on these portfolios, and to be able to, sit or stand in front of a panel of adults and share all the hard work that they've done during this time really helps. It also allows us to have a nice group of adults, community members and staff members here to listen. And as we said last night, we have close to around 170 portfolios to review. So I do not know how we would do that without making use of these conference days. So we're very grateful for the time.
And just to elaborate a little bit, because I think Principal Ward is being very humble in the organizational and systematic structures that have to be involved in being able to pull this off. With 100 and how many did you say, Megan? How many portfolios that are being presented?
It might be 179. Now I'm forgetting the exact number. We have 720 kids. Let's see how many of them are seniors this year.
Yeah, and the layers of groups that are going
179
that have to be coordinated is monumental. I know that Julie Gavoni, the assistant principal, provided a lot of support here too, but
no, she didn't. So I provided the support to Julie.
Okay.
Julie coordinated. I want to be really clear about that.
And it was a monumental feat. So it was really cool to see all the schedules and the community members and the teachers and the advisors. And I'm just really excited to be a part of it. And so thank you for inviting me. I don't know if Bernie, if you're coming, or if Chad, you're coming, but next go around, I'm sure they're going to do this next year as well with the next group if you're not able to participate. And I encourage everyone to get involved. So great job. Anybody have any questions for Megan?
No, really excited for the experience. if we can going forward, if it's possible, maybe we could have a student or two present at a curriculum committee meeting and show some of the exemplars of their work. If you've got any takers or anybody who'd like to try participating in this forum, that way we'd have the opportunity to have the larger community who can't attend the event see it, and we have a good sample to reference for people to take a look if they want to see it. So something to think about.
That's a really cool idea. I think we're going to see how the week goes. We're going to look at the products that are revealed to us. And certainly we're going to look at some portfolios to be used as exemplars for our students going forward. And I think that's a great idea to honor the work of some of our students that we really look at who did a fantastic job and say, hey, you want to come have a conversation at a curriculum committee or even a board meeting potentially. So great idea. I love it.
Yeah, I really have no questions. The school board position is an interesting one because you often end up asking questions only about the things that you have some concerns about or some skepticism. The flip side is there's so many things that are so wonderful that like really you're just like, good job. That's so exceptionally exciting. I can't attend this year. Daytimes are pretty tough for me sometimes. And so even these meetings are hard to squeeze in. So unfortunately, I'm going to miss it. But I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. And for those of you who might not know, I actually work in my day job. My actual job, besides being on the Board of Ed, is running a communication training company. So Lord knows I see the value of having kids have to stand up or sit and speak about their experiences to others and take the ownership of that. So nothing but, good job and keep it up. And I hope it's a smashing success. And also to Bernie's point, I wouldn't suggest this necessarily definitely not this late in the game now, but over time, we may want to consider filming some of this. It's a very double-edged sword because this really, I think, at least in the way it's intended, is for the students to have this chance to share these ideas. And you certainly don't want to introduce any layer of self-consciousness or additional sort of eyes on it. To Bernie's point, though, of course, it's nice for others to be able to see what's happening. So maybe the sweet spot is a couple people do get tabbed to come and present to the board, or the PTO also, I'm sure, would love to get some exposure to this. So maybe that's an interesting thing to think about going forward is, do we try to showcase this to other people and other groups who can't necessarily be there on those days? I have no strong opinion about that. I just throw it forward as an idea of maybe to think about for future times.
Yeah, we do have a number of community members, whether it's from ADAP, our Alcohol and Drug Awareness Program, our PTO members. Some are on our panel, some of our judges and coaches for our mock trial team. So I think we've really spread the wealth in who's participating in terms of community members. My only reservation about filming, and I know you weren't necessarily suggesting filming, is that these panels are also intended to be intimate because some of the stories that we're going to hear from kids are pretty personal, right? It's like their own personal journey and their own personal growth. So as we kind of listen and as we know kids and who are going to be the kids who are super comfortable standing up in front of a larger streaming audience versus who are more comfortable with a more personal audience. But unless a kid really wanted to record it, I don't see us recording in the future because we do want to maintain that kind of meta moment for them, right? Like being able to really self-reflect on their growth. And, not that we want kids to share every detail, but certainly be able to have that kind of personal connection. As a lot of folks in education say, when you can make it really kind of personal and help kids to kind of own their own learning and look at how it kind of changes them and how they've evolved, that's the sweet spot for us, right? That they've really kind of personalized it. So
yeah, I withdraw. As the word left my mouth, I was thinking through it. I should withdraw the suggestion. I only see it done so much in my line of work. But you all have certainly had to endure me railing about the ills of phones and technology and things like that. So I don't think bringing even more sort of technological awareness about recording things and that layer of self sort of feedback loop about how am I looking to one other thing? You're right, leave it for the kids. Yeah. I guess it was just me thinking through what a cool thing and how can we let people know about this even more. But keep going, and I'm sure you're going to have a bunch of ideas as of Monday next week.
Sure. For sure.
What's great and what you could fix and change and adjust going forward. So I'm really excited to hear how it all plays out.
Yep. Thanks.
All right, great. Thanks, Megan. I know you have some other meetings, so
Yep.
but you're welcome to stay if you need to stay, if you'd like to
I have
stay.
to hop off for a 3:15, but thank
Sounds-
you. Nice to
sounds
see
great.
everybody.
Thanks for coming.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to Megan, I mean, her and her team are always very reflective when it comes, like as we all are, right? And I think all the suggestions are taken very seriously, and also thinking about how we move forward with any of our initiatives. What's our feedback, right? I always say feedback is a gift. And then how do we want to enhance or improve upon some of the practices that we have in the district. So I know that after this is done, the first time around as a team, they're going to do a lot of self-reflection, debrief with kids, with teachers, and next year it's going to look even bigger and better. So I'm excited as well. Hi, Principal Doak. Dan's here as well. Hi. You there, Dan? Hi, sorry. We're going to move on to just two brief quick updates on the agenda. I know I should be following in order, but literacy, I just wanted to give a shout out and let everybody know that as we start moving and transitioning to our newer core literacy program, we will be doing school-based presentations through PTOs to provide some more detail around the science of reading and the process in which that we use to vet the different core resources that the state has adopted, and how we as a district with our district literacy committee vetted all those resources a little bit more in detail, and how we decided to adopt the one that we chose. And then also, what is the district literacy committee doing to prepare for next school year, and what does our professional development look like as we begin to implement that new core resource. So the first school-based conversation will be through the K-5 PTO in May. So that's just a quick update on that. And then next is the special education meeting. You may have heard last night with Tracy's update. She always has a district-wide special education parent meeting. It is wrong or incorrect on my agenda. Originally, we were planning for April. She has finalized that date to be March 21st, which is at 4 p.m. And I believe, Dan, it's going to be at the middle school, which is typically where it is, right? All right. And then the last update before I pull up and discuss about Tri-State, and that'll be our last agenda item for today. As we move into the spring, yes, let's say the fun S word, which is spring, not the other S word that we're seeing outside today. We are going to be moving into our spring window for assessment. As many of you know, that involves our state mandated assessments, including Smarter Balanced. SAT is actually coming down the pike in a week or so. We also have our next generation science assessment. And then we conclude our year out with a couple exciting kind of large scale assessments that kind of align and will directly align to our school and district improvement plans, which are NWA for math and reading, and also our 8th grade and 10th grade writing portfolio. So there's a lot happening once April hits, and you'll be getting follow-up information from your building principals through the weekly updates that they communicate with parents. So look out for that as well. Any questions on those three quick updates before we transition to the last item, which is Tri-State?
Just one quick thought to throw out there. We're talking about the portrait of the graduate and the students doing the presentations and the spring season and assessments. Is there any thought about the students' stress level going into these tests, these different types of benchmarks? And we had a whole meeting on SEL last time. We're going to bridge that meeting into this one and think about, are we providing the proper support? Do we see more students having needs during this time? Is there anything you guys think we could do differently, or any way the board could support that initiative?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know Dan is itching to add, to chime in. I just wanted to say that I think even from my own children's perspective, I think it definitely, the anxiety and stress level, I think, increases as students get older, right? Because maybe the feeling of accountability on some of these assessments evolves and changes as they get older, as it should. I know that our principals are very strategic and thoughtful when it comes to the scheduling aspect of these assessments. So from a district perspective, and you look at the variety of assessments and we talk about all those assessments, it seems very grandiose. And from a district perspective, it is, because there's a lot of different assessments. It impacts different grade levels. But when you really look at the unpacking of the scheduling at the school-based level, our principals are very strategic in ensuring that there's a balance between a student's ability to manage the variety of assessments, that it's scheduled strategically so there's enough, I wouldn't say a break, but there is some mental break in between some of these assessments. And there's also sometimes activities that involve opportunities to take a break from that focused attention and energy that has to go into doing their best work when they're completing these assessments. But from a district perspective, I can tell you that our principals are really good at looking at the calendar and ensuring that there's a balance between opportunities for kids to actually do their best work and additional activities that are not focused on the assessment. Dan, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, you did a nice job. I would just give a little more color in terms of what we do at the middle school. We even had conversations about which assessment should come first. Should we do math first, and or reading? And we're separating them by a week. One would be 1 week, another the other week, and letting the students know that none of these are assessments that they cram for, whether it's SBA, Next Generation Science Standards, or NWEA, which we will be doing throughout the spring, as well as 8th grade writing portfolio. It's not like cram for and then pull an all-nighter and take an exam of some sort. It's, even like the writing portfolio, there's only one new piece of writing that students create for that in 8th during this time period. And that's the reflective letter that they do about themselves as writers and how they see their growth. It's really a metacognitive piece as they, rework some of the writing that they've already done and receive feedback. But these are samples of their writing from 7th and 8th grade. So it's not a typical assessment the way you sit down and take a writing test. We've also talked about how to use mindfulness, how to, structure the day. So we start with some activities to get their energy going. We know we have some small groups, students that's an accommodation. They take assessments in a small group. And we know that after about 30 minutes, they need a sensory break. They need to get up and go for a walk and then come back and sit down. And we know that they'll be more effective that way. So yes, as Tina said, we are practicing what we preach in terms of wellness and incorporating that into our the assessment window for the spring.
Yeah, and as you know, a couple extra things too. I'm happy to hear years ago when the state removed the expectation that these assessments were timed. We know there's a lot of research around anxiety that is increased when you're providing a time limit for students. So they do have opportunities to kind of manage strategically their time to complete it so they can complete their assessments at their own pace, which is very helpful. And also, I don't want, since we have parents potentially listening and even staff members, we do our best to remind students that some of the best preparation is a really good night's sleep and some good brain food in the morning, healthy food like fruits before you come in the morning. And that allows you to be more alert and increase your energy and maintain that energy throughout the testing period. So sometimes I think we take that for granted, but it actually is a good way to start the day. Whether you're testing or not. That's from a mom's perspective. Any other questions? Those are great questions.
If you have any parents that are listening and they are concerned about their students or they notice anxiety in their student, who do you think they should contact? What's the best procedure to go through?
Go ahead, Dan.
I always start with the counselor at the middle school, each grade level counselor, and or if it's a special education student, the case manager. Those would be the people to start with. They know this.
Yeah, and I would think too, like students are surrounded by a lot of adult mentors, and so I would always encourage them to speak up and talk to their teachers too. If they're coming in early, especially the younger students, and they're coming in and many times the first person they see is their teacher. So always encourage the students to be not afraid to speak up and talk to their teacher if they're feeling a level of stress or anxiety that they need to have some strategies to decompress before they engage in their best work. And they do their best when they arrive on that given day. Okay.
I have 2 comments and then a question.
Mhm.
A comment is I'm so pleased to hear, and it sounds like the same theme coming out, but what you just said, Dan, I'm so pleased to hear this idea that the test is really an assessment about the learning as opposed to an end product that is from like cramming for the test. Because there's tons of data that tests are useful assessments, but not good if that's the entire goal of like teaching towards a test for months and months and years. So I'm really pleased to hear that. And that also jives with the same message you've been saying as we've been looking at the reading assessment and all the ways in which you're considering the overhaul of the reading curriculum as well as the math, is making sure that the tests are evidence of things working as opposed to the other way around. So that's wonderful to hear. The other comment, Dan, I would just reinforce, because you all did a good job of talking about this, and I think it was Megan primarily, but at the last meeting, but all the ways in which you're trying to make the classrooms 3-dimensional, like standing up, going to showing the work on the board with the math and sort of getting people out of their seats, up, drawing, moving, that sort of thing. And to your point about the mindfulness, just a little plug here that one of the things I was most excited about when I walked through Hurlbut a couple months back was all the chairs, the little rocker chairs and the different kind of things that allow students to move. So just underlining that point that as you're thinking about helping kids not be quite in that same anxious kind of setting for test taking, if there are ways to give them physical breaks, that's probably a really good direction that you're already trending in. And then the third question, this is a big enough topic, I won't throw it into this meeting like a need to address now, but so I can do my sort of education on it, and I guess the whole school board can. What do we need to know about the SAT and the ACT and these other tests in general over the next period of years? Because I know things have shifted a lot in terms of like SAT is now optional at lots of colleges. Places are beginning to kind of like either de-emphasize it or maybe even phase it out altogether. So I won't throw my ignorant questions at you right now, but what should we be studying to be informed about that topic as I'm imagining that discussion is going to continue over the months and years?
I think that's a great next meeting agenda topic. It's timely. And I would love to involve Meredith Starzyk, not only about an overview of like maybe the test components and how the test is made up, but also as you said, Chad, about changes to admissions, any updates regarding these assessments and how they may influence or impact student admissions to college or any other use of that assessment. I think that might be a great topic and a further discussion next time, and we can prepare that for sure. Sound like a good plan?
Yeah, sure. And you don't have to either. I can also I'm just curious because I know the landscape is shifting a lot. So I want to be informed about it in case next year, like, WPS decides we're going to shift in this way or that way. So we have a little bit of background on the topic.
To your point, it's evolving, and I would love to dive a little deeper into just because of personal reasons, because my son and daughter are getting at that point. So there's always something new to learn. So I think it's a great idea and timely. So we'll add it on for sure. All right. Any other questions? Hi, David. How are you? I see you popped in there.
Yes. Sorry, I'm late. Took me longer to get back to my lovely office on the roads than I thought.
You have power though, so that's good.
That's when I'm at the office.
Oh, got it.
I lost power last night because a truck hit a telephone pole on Northfield and Weston Road.
Wow.
Nothing to do with the weather. We got it back at 5:30 this morning.
Oh, goodness. At least you have a generator, so that was good.
Yes.
All right. So our last topic on the agenda is we wanted to provide an update and an open discussion about our tri-state visit. So I've been updating and reminding everyone that this year we are very fortunate to be a participatory district of the Tri-State Consortium. And I'm going to just pull up my slides real quick. Just a few to reference as we talk about this. And I'm really happy that Dan is going to actually give us some new insights because he actually was able to attend as a member, a visiting member of a Tri-State Visiting Committee. So I'm going to just start and provide a brief overview for those of you listening or those of you that may be new to a Tri-State experience. So Tri-State is a consortium with Alliance Public School Districts in the neighboring area from New York, from Connecticut, and you are very similar to our RESCs, right? We have regional educational service centers in the state of Connecticut. Weston, depending on where you're located, Weston is a member of the of CES, which is the Cooperative Educational Services. But Tri-State is a little broader. It involves public schools from not only the state of Connecticut, but across the state line as well. And the purpose of Tri-State is that depending on what you're looking to get some feedback on, focusing on advancing your teaching and learning practices, maybe an initiative that you have in the district. It could range from anything from core content area information. It could go from social emotional learning that Dan actually was able to witness with the visiting team that he was with. But the idea is that they come in for 2.5 days based on your essential question. And you have some critical friends to come in and provide some review based on what you would like to get feedback on. And they do a really intense deep dive based on evidence and artifacts that you and your district team gathers and collects based on what you're asking your Tri-State Consortium visiting team to review and look at. So it's really an assets-based approach. They're not intended to come in to tell you everything you're doing wrong. The idea is to highlight aspects of your program and your initiatives that you're doing very well in the district and give feedback on how to improve them, right? So we want to really, we thought very hard and deeply around what this could look like for us, for our visiting committee. And when I arrived, my first day on the job, September 19th, was actually to not go to Weston, but it was to go to the Tri-State Consortium visiting, the Tri-State Consortium's training with all of the member teams, and we were receiving the training on how to organize and conduct a Tri-State visit. And so Dan was with me at that time. We had another principal, teachers, the SILs were with us. And that's when we started to brainstorm, what do we want our visit to look like? There's different kinds of visits. You can do a full-born 8-indicator review, or you can do a focus consultancy, which is really looking at just a few of the indicators, which we are going to participate in a couple weeks. So this is a consultancy visit. It really reviews 2 indicators that we identified, and then we created essential questions around these indicators. So the 2 indicators that we would like feedback on from the visiting committee is on student metacognition and equitable support for student needs, focusing specifically on our math instructional practices, our math curriculum, and some of the work that Chad mentioned before that we've been really leaning into, which is how do we build a thinking classroom where kids are actively engaged and moving and really student-centered. And so focusing specifically in grades 5 through 12, these are our 2 essential questions that we're asking our visiting committee to review with us, which is, to what extent do our instructional strategies promote a student-centered approach to learning mathematics in grades 5 through 12, focusing specifically on metacognitive strategies, as well as ensuring that we have high expectations for all students in the classroom. And then the second essential question is, to what extent does our current math curriculum in grades 5 through 12 provide all students with equal opportunity to access grade level content and maintain high expectations for all? So what happens is, once they come in, There's about 14 members across the consortium that will come in and visit, and they will look at evidence that we have gathered internally that help them answer some of these essential questions relative to the indicators, which, as I mentioned before, are focusing on metacognition and equitable support for all students. So just to give you a brief overview of the day, the visit is on the 29th of March, the 30th of March, and then a half day on the 31st. So 2 full days of review. They come in the morning, we do a district presentation internally, and they start rolling up their sleeves and they dive into the evidence that we've gathered for them. Then they get a break, and then they start going out into classrooms. They start conducting focus group interviews. They do individual interviews with a variety of stakeholders, and that includes administrators, teachers, potentially members of the Board of Ed, volunteer parents, and even students. And so that work continues throughout the next full day as well, because as you can imagine, the visiting committee has to do this for all classrooms in grades 5 through 12 in mathematics. So it does take some scaffolding and some creative scheduling. And so the principals have been really helping me build that schedule so that we can pull focus groups, we can look at interviews, they can go into a variety of classrooms, and they have time to look at the evidence. And then on the last day, there will be a district debrief. There will be some additional activities where the visiting committee will get to ask some probing questions of us based on our program and what we do in Weston. And then after that, there is a full written report that provides us the full feedback from all visiting members based on our essential questions. So it's an intense 2.5 days. To be completely honest, it's the first time that I've engaged in an organizational aspect of Tri-State. I have been trained before, but I've never actually coordinated a visit. So I'm really excited to have our members come in and give us some feedback based on some work that we're doing internally in Weston relative to mathematics and focusing on student-centered learning. So Dan actually returned from New Canaan, where he was a member as a participatory member of the visiting committee. So he's also a great asset right now. I've been picking his brain and really kind of seeing what it looked like and what it sounded like. And June is doing a tremendous amount of work too in coordinating this for us. And just really excited to get some feedback. As I mentioned before, feedback is a gift, and there's no better feedback than our own colleagues and peers from other districts when they come in and kind of see what we're doing and see how great Weston is. So Dan, did you want to add anything?
Well, I would just say that as a member of the visiting team, I think this is among the best professional development that I can receive as an educator, because I'm going out to neighboring districts. I'm interacting with their faculty, their administrators, their parents, their students, looking at their evidence, really with the eye towards the question that they posed. And, when you're a member of Tri-State, you don't ask the easy questions. You're not asking just something that you're going to get a pat on the back, great job. You're really looking for your critical friends to push you to the next level of work. And it's the protocols that we've been trained in, because in order to be a member of a visiting team, you have to be trained in Tri-State's protocols. That training really helps set the tone for the visit. But it's the interactions. I came back, I have to tell you, I came back with so many ideas that we could do here at the middle school, just small tweaks, some of them. And I also came back with the affirmation is that, we're a pretty good school. And some things about middle schools, our middle schools, whether it's New Canaan or Weston, you have some of the exact same challenges and often the same approaches, but sometimes slightly different approaches. And that's how we build off of each other and grow.
Yeah, and the networking that we get also, as Dan mentioned, doesn't just happen when you're participating in the visit. It also happens outside of it as well. I mean, this Tri-State Consortium, being a member of the consortium, allows us to have regular meetings and regular support. And the three, Dan, what do we call Marty and Kathleen? What are the directors of Tri-State?
It's the director and assistant director of Tri-State.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I have found them to also be an asset for us if there's questions or any ideas that they've had. They're former superintendents. They've been in this work as well. And so I find myself always asking and picking their brain about certain things in the district as well. So just even being a member of the consortium goes beyond just doing visits like this too.
Right. And I would even add, like you mentioned, the meeting that we went to in the fall.
Mhm.
They'll bring in some leader in educational thinking, whether it's I think I saw Heidi Hayes Jacob there before. I've seen other speakers that come and address the group. So that's great professional development. The ongoing professional development and network is also very helpful. At every level of administration, they have a different group. So I belong to the middle school principals study group, and we get together roughly 4 times a year. Lately, it's 2 of them have been virtual and 2 are in person down in Rye, New York. And it brings together similar districts, like Tina said, from New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And we often will tackle a text or a topic and read and share our thoughts and share our own experiences. And it's that collective discussion, and it really is what pushes our thinking and helps us grow as leaders. And Drew Walters goes to the middle school assistant principals group, and I'm sure that there's the superintendents and the assistant superintendents, and we all have these groups that really help us, keep up with the field and keep growing.
Yeah, I was actually able to partner with find someone in New York who's using American Reading Company, for example, who had been starting it over a year ago. And because of that, I was able to get a small group to have a conversation around, how are they doing? How's it going? So it does, beyond the visit, you're able to build additional networks within the tri-state area, which is always nice because they're doing great things too. And it's always nice to piggyback on some of the ideas that they may have and bring it in to see if it works here in Weston.
And Tina, I don't think I would have made it through the pandemic without the support group, because we even started, it was a subgroup of the middle school principals, just the ones here in Southern Fairfield County. We were meeting weekly or bi-weekly just to share ideas. How are you going to handle the moving up ceremonies? When you go back, how are you going to handle lockers? How are you going to handle your lunch waves? In fact, tomorrow, and we kept that going after the pandemic. So every 2 weeks, a small group, and it's usually Westport, New Canaan, Wilton, Ridgefield, Easton Reading. Those are the main groups and Weston, and we get together. And actually, it's Dave Gussich, the principal at Sachs Middle School, New Canaan, who has been the lead for that group, keeping us going. And it was his school that I got to visit last Thursday. So it's just it's great work that we're able to do collectively. That's great.
Yeah, I haven't been able to get through the assistant superintendent group because it's in where is it? The Castle.
Whitby Castle in Rye.
Whitby Castle, and it does take a little bit to get there, and just hasn't fit into my schedule yet. But I'm looking forward to being able to participate in a visit as well. I just wasn't able to do it this year, but I'm hoping that I can also engage in a visit at another school, because they have it every year. Every year they have a list of all the districts that are conducting the 2.5-day visits with Critical Friends, and the internal Tri-State Consortium get to volunteer. They seek for administrative support, and then we go out and participate in visits and support the other schools. So it is a really nice way to build collegiality and support each other.
And Tina, as a member, I think the expectation is that every 4 years we participate in receiving a visit, and
Okay.
then and I think it's 4 years, and then after the visit, there's like a 2-year follow-up in between,
Okay.
where a subgroup of this visiting team will come back, and we report out on where we are with the recommendations, and so it's not like a one and done type
That's
of
nice.
thing. It continues.
Good to know.
Our last one, I think, was around literacy.
Writing, right? Was it writing?
Yeah. And then before that, we did have a math one, maybe
Mhm.
before that. I've been on some really interesting ones. I've been on world language over in, up in New York, just above Stanford. I can't remember which
The
town.
New Canaan's essential question, just so everybody is aware, was around mindfulness and
Well-being.
how well-being and the strategies that they're implementing in within the culture and climate of the school and the practices in the classroom, right? Is that right,
Yeah,
Dan?
exactly. It was, to what extent is our intentional commitment to well-being embedded in our school communities and practices? They also use the ruler approach like we do at our elementary levels, and they also use DBT, and they have several other aspects. So it seemed very familiar to me when I was there.
That's great. Any questions on our visit coming up? You might be seeing some updates from the principals, and you can also see if you want to get involved if you're at those levels.
I've been multitasking. I've got my Swift alert ready to go to my families looking for parent volunteers for the focus group.
Great.
I have a couple questions, Tina.
Yeah.
So the March 31st at day 3 district debrief, is that the visitors sharing back with us their thoughts on what they see and their answers to these two, provocations?
So Dan, you want to like
happy to.
frame it out?
So that's really the protocol. So what happens on that last day, the Friday morning, is we go into a room and there's a big circle of chairs. Half of the circle is made up of the visiting team and half represents the district, especially those members of the district team who are most closely related to the work around the essential question. And the visiting team will ask some clarifying questions, usually yes, no, or very short answer responses, and then some probing questions. And then the members of the district withdraw to the outer circle, and the team forms a very tight, it's not even the entire team, it's a representative group of the team, maybe 7 or 8 people, form a smaller circle. And this is the weird part of this protocol. We talk as members of the visiting team about the district almost as if they're not there. And we wonder if maybe they've considered this, or we wonder to what extent, my question was, for example, I wonder to what extent the posting of Grades in Power School and the access to Grades in Power School impacts well-being at the middle school level. It's something I've been seriously been wondering about. And so we asked that, it sort of plants some seeds, and then maybe they might listen. And at the end of all of that, wonderings and kind of pushing their thinking, then we all make one big circle again, and we ask the district, did anything, or what did you hear while we were talking amongst ourselves that resonated with you? And that's when you get members of the district team to start talking again about, the things that they heard, and what they're thinking next steps would be. And then there is a written report that comes from Tri-State, not immediately. And then, like I said, then there's a 2-year follow-up with a representative group of that same team.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the fishbowl activity you're describing that happens on March 30th, or is that the?
I think I messed up on the schedule, Chad.
Yeah.
I think I put it on the second day. It's supposed to be on the third day.
That's the last day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
There are focus groups on the second day.
I see.
The first day was full of looking at the artifacts, the
Right.
The lessons, what the teachers put in the buckets and the binders or online, and then it's the interview. We interview the staff, the teachers, the students, the parents, and then we visit classes. I was able to go to East Elementary School and Sachs Middle School on Thursday that's how the day was split up for me, and that's where I interacted most.
Understood. And one other question, Tina, you had said, you'd sort of hinted that like part of what we're looking at in math is how the classroom is being used or that, but I don't, in the text of the two questions, I don't know where that fits in these two essential questions. Can you help me with
Yeah,
that?
it's focused on student-centered approaches. So what
Oh.
strategies are how are we designing the learning?
Ah.
So number one, the tasks are student-centered, right? And then number two, some of my thoughts around those essential questions is, how do the students see themselves in that work? So that's the metacognitive part. How do they see themselves as mathematicians when they're in the classroom? And that connects to the way that we're designing the learning, right? And it connects to some of the work that Weston had started, I believe, Dan, now are we in year 2 around building thinking classrooms, where students are up, they're moving around the room, they're using whiteboards, they're doing a lot of low floor, high ceiling tasks. Like, how are we allowing access for all students in classrooms, regardless of the level that they might be in? And that's sometimes harder than we may think. And I think, having done this before, not in Weston, obviously, it's quite eye-opening when you ask kids a metacognitive question about how they see themselves or math identity in the math classrooms. And so I'm really excited to hear about what the focus group looks like with kids and how the parents interact with some of those questions relative to student identity and metacognition in supporting math instruction and their math experiences in the classroom. And how can we improve the design of learning in mathematics, specifically in grades 5 through 12. If I could just add one piece to make sure that we are all very clear, though, the work and the feedback that we get from our critical friends around these two essential questions will inform our work for K through 12. The reason why it's only 5 through 12, just to remind everyone, is because we had a lot of work happening simultaneously with reading in the K-5 realm. And so I wanted to be very mindful of district initiatives and balancing the workload of our staff to be able to do 2 of these very large monumental tasks. And so the work will influence K through 12, but the team that's coming is just going to look at evidence from 5 through 12 for this go around. And that was intentionally designed.
It's fascinating that the fishbowl activity, in a way, is an example of thinking classrooms. Like, form a big circle, and everybody moves more of a small circle, and now talk about what's happening in the small circle to the big circle. Can people view this or participate? I mean, it sounds like a very cool but perhaps private activity. The part on the 31st, can people actually observe that or hear some of these provocations and questions and stuff like that?
Dan, what's the structure of that last day?
So the protocol is it's a representative group, again, of the district. I didn't see any board members or parents in that part of it. There were interviews. I know there were groups that were interviewing board members. It was basically the superintendent, assistant superintendent,
teachers, right?
Teachers and
would be still like people, like leaders around that essential question, maybe like because it was wellness, right? Were there any psychologists or?
Yes, under wellness, they have a director, Dr. Susan Bliss. I'm trying to remember what her role is exactly. She's not necessarily, it's not pupil services, but it's something related to that. And they had, there was a counselor, social worker, principals, assistant principals, dean of students that were part of, and teachers, part of that process. But it's not necessarily for the whole group. The report is made public afterwards, usually in most districts. But the process itself, it's just because it would be over, even the entire visiting team doesn't actively participate. We're kind of watching, and the district team, the whole team isn't. We have to decide like a representative group who's going to be in that circle when there's the back and forth between the team.
Makes sense. It just sounds like a cool thing. So
yeah, I'm excited.
What a cool resource.
Yeah,
I just want to jump in. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
I had nothing to say other than this is super neat, and I totally understand why it would be so beneficial. And Dan, it's exciting, and Tina, it's exciting. So I have nothing to add other than it just seems like a great opportunity.
Agreed.
All right, Bernie.
No, I was just going to say that I just wanted to shout out how great it is to look at the metacognitive piece in this study of mathematics, because I think we throw around terms a lot like let's make it a student-centered classroom. But just because we let students take the direction doesn't mean they know how to lead or doesn't know how they don't know how necessarily to learn that way. So just because something's student-centered doesn't mean that they're just going to be able to take the ball and run with it. Just if you've spent most of your time sitting and learning in one particular strategy, when somebody then tells you to be creative about it, you got to learn how to stretch. So I like that not only are we trying to get the students to be the leaders in our curricular design, but also analyzing their ability to take that lead and be successful with it is such a key piece to making those student-centered classrooms successful. Because we have a set of standards we're following and a curriculum we're following. So it's how do you get the students to take the initiative on those things we're working on? So I think it's great.
And I think too, validating some of the work that our SILs have been really emphasizing, which is around the building thinking classroom, specifically in mathematics over the last couple of years. I think this will give some really good validating and maybe reassurance that we're moving in the right direction. And then how are the teachers and the students receiving some of the shift in strategies and practices in the classroom, and what might be some areas that we're ready to move on to the next level, like Dan said. So I'm really excited for the feedback. I love feedback. And so I can't wait to share the report with you when we get it.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So I forgot to share the agenda, but the agenda then, that's the last bullet item in the agenda. The two topics for next, I'm sorry, does anybody have any other questions on the agenda topics? No?
Well, we've got the minutes to approve. We can do that right at the end.
Okay.
Should we do that now?
That part. Just the two topics for next meeting agenda. And as always, you can definitely connect with me or Bernie about adding additional topics. But I did add some information and background information regarding preparation and future purpose around SAT and ACT. As Chad mentioned, I think that's a great and timely topic. I also wanted to add that by the next time we meet, we will have some explicit feedback and reflection around the March 20th professional development that we have organized out in the field for all staff members. I mentioned it last night. We have about 57 different options that we are offering on March 20th to staff members. And after every session, there is a feedback form that they are able to complete to give us some for reflective comments around their experience and how we can improve additional opportunities for teachers to choose their professional development and drive some of their own professional growth as we move into next school year as well. So I'll be able to give you some explicit feedback from out in the field the next time we meet.
Great. One more topic that maybe we can consider for the agenda is a look at our attendance. I know we just did a big mid-year check-in for the academics, but hearing so much about chronic absenteeism in the state of Connecticut being such a big issue, kind of how we're standing and we're tracking, and we're still so many sicknesses going around and people are still getting COVID, and just and how we're using our mental health days and getting a feel for where our students are right now.
I think that's a great idea. We actually have a district attendance committee. We've been working internally to refine some of our practices and communication around chronic absenteeism with students and parents, because as you know, it is a individual indicator in our next generation accountability system, which is now back online. So we'll have new reports and new data that Weston is reflected against, one of which is indicator 4, on chronic absenteeism. So I think that's a great topic.
Can I add to that? for when we do talk about it at next
Yeah.
meeting, because it came up at last night's Board of Ed meeting briefly.
Yeah.
I think Bernie actually brought it up as part of something from maybe CABE or curriculum committee. It would be helpful to have some data or shed some light on absenteeism in Weston, because as a just looking at it from the outside in, you wouldn't think of chronic absenteeism as something that we suffer from in Weston. So can you be prepared, like, is it chronic absenteeism because parents generally take their kids overseas on vacations? Is it health related? So just to put, shine some color on what we believe the reason is, because it could be very different than that of inner city who might be suffering chronic absenteeism for other reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think unless you dive into the law, because there's explicit definitions and legal aspects of the state guidelines around truancy, chronic absenteeism, unexcused and excused absences, and this is a layers deep conversation, and we've been having that internally as well. And so I don't think it's a one-shot conversation, but I think it's a great time to start the conversation for sure, because we're always looking at reducing those absenteeism numbers across the district. And last year, I'd love to show you, because if you go on EdSite, it is public. You can look at our chronic absenteeism numbers. We have been looking at how we are reporting those numbers, and you can see that we've got some areas to improve in that arena.
Okay, that would be helpful just to know, then understand what you're saying, that there's essentially excused absences, unexcused absences, to figure out what falls into those buckets. So I know we're somewhat guilty of taking our kids out of school, although I can tell you my high schooler is totally opposed to it, because he now recognizes missing a day of school is not good for him. But my second grader, so we sort of use opportunities to have him with the family. It'd be helpful to know, again, are those excused or unexcused absences when a family decides to take the child out for a family event?
Yep.
Just so we have, so we understand the difference, right, between a child who is not in the school because the parent took him out for a family vacation versus a child who's not in school because of chronic illness or lots of other reasons, right, that a child might not be in school. And I think we need.
Yeah, we'll bring all that up, and we'll show exactly clearly how the state quantifies or categorizes those types of absences next time for sure, because it's going to take a little bit of organization and make sure that we're very clear on what that is for sure. Great. Okay, Bernie, did you want to approve the minutes from last time?
Turn on my mic. Can I get a motion to approve the February 2020? Well, before that, does anybody have any comments or feedback or changes for the minutes? Pretty good. Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the February 2023 minutes?
I don't have the motion language, but if we can be informal about it, so moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Great. So that concludes the agenda on our end. Thank you guys so much for listening. So I don't have any other topics today.
Chad, David, anything else before we sign off?
Not for me.
All right, well, get home safe. Anybody who's got to go out there. All right.
You too. Great to see you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.